All right, everyone, we're picking up with our Choosify Wins series. These are 2020 wins. If you listen to our Christmas episode, you heard the first part of the series. This is part two. We just got the opportunity to speak with really, I think, close to 20 different families and couples and individuals from our community and really kind of go through what by any standard has been an insanely difficult year and talk about how being a part of this community and taking action specifically on the ideas that this community is sharing has been life-changing. And I think what becomes very obvious is that the phrase life-changing is not a platitude, but a defined statement of success just based on how it's manifested in these individuals' lives. And so, you get the chance to hear Brad and I talking about these things and talking with guests that maybe have a body of work that have kind of built something out. But what does it mean for individuals in this community that have made the choice to listen to this podcast for months, years? What did this information and what did the action mean for them this year? A very, very challenging year. With that, welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is Choosify. All right, Brad, really excited to dive into this and share part two of this win series from 2020. It's going to build nicely on the last episode that we did that was released just over Christmas. And, I know for you, like as we were kind of setting up these conversations, kind of give us a sense for, why these individuals came on the show, how they connected with you, and what it was about these individuals that made you want to invite them on the show and share this conversation with a larger audience.
Yeah, this was really a whole community effort, right? And that's what's so amazing about our community is that you guys hear our calls and you take action. I think that covers the entire spectrum. And that was what happened here. So I put out a call in my bi-weekly email to send in your 2020 wins, that we were going to have this end of year episode, this Facebook Live, that we want to hear from you. And people wrote in droves. We also mentioned it on the podcast. And it was really amazing to go through these emails and read people's stories and just see all the incredible action they've taken, the ways they've made their lives better in a variety of aspects. Jonathan, I think that to me was what jumped out and what I really wanted to highlight and why I picked a lot of these people is it's not just the nuts and bolts of money, right? That's an important part, obviously. And I think that's the fundamental aspect of what we're doing here. But the starting point. And it's just about, like we've talked about, and we've always used this kind of clunky phrase, this is a life optimization strategy, right? Like maybe not the most elegant phrase we've ever come up with, but I think it really hits it, right? That this is about just living a better life. And it touches all aspects from relationships to community to health. And I think that's actually one that you and I have worked on significantly ourselves this year, the past couple years. And Costa's story here, actually in this upcoming episode, we don't want to ruin it, but this touches on it perfectly, right?
What I love about our community is that when we are able to have the opportunity to share, something that we're working on maybe personally or as a community, many people will write you back and share with you what their version of that looked like. Costa in this episode is no exception. When we're talking about health and fitness, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, we have a really cool example in this one about entrepreneurship during a very challenging year. But even, Brad, something that isn't in this episode that I thought we could address is actually feedback that we got very recently talking about this burpee challenge. You took on this burpee challenge. And to hear this, actually, Alan took on a burpee challenge. You saw that Alan was doing it, and you decided that, hey, I want to join in on that. So it's exactly, that's the piece of this. You joined in on someone else's challenge. You were inspired by someone else. You shared that on the podcast. I shared with you my tiny version of jumping in as well. And then our audience, you got an email from someone in our audience that also took action on this. So I would love for you to share just a tiny little bit about that, about the conversation that we had and then the email response you got.
Yeah, it's all about the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Like this is what we talk about. It's about upgrading the people that you consider your peer group, the people you look up to, frankly. Like I mentioned that when we were talking about these burpees originally, that Alan and Katie Donegan, who Alan Donegan has been on the show many times. He has the Rebel Entrepreneur podcast. Him and his wife, Katie, were doing these amazing burpees that I was just blown away by. And I said, like, I have never done a burpee with that ferocity in my entire life. And I saw they were running a challenge in the month of December. And I basically stepped up and said, I'm going to do 1,300 burpees in the month of December. which is kind of a daunting number, but I'm on pace. So, and then we talked about it on the podcast, right? Just because this is what's going on in our lives. And what's cool is I got this amazing email from Christine, like the day after the episode went live. And she said, "Oh my goodness, I listened to episode 277. And instead of my lazy 3-mile run, which, sidebar, that's not lazy. That's incredible, Christine, obviously. But what she did was she did a half mile and then 10 burpees, a half mile, another 10 burpees, and repeated that 4 times for a total of 2 miles and 40 burpees. And she said, I'm completely spent. That was so much harder than my regular workout and working on FI. So she said, I love you guys. Thanks for all you do. And she also went on to say, no push-ups yet in the burpee. But that's the cool thing, right? Is you can always do a little bit more. And I think that's what's fun. Like, you have to figure out what works for you. And that is just such a critical piece of everything we talk about here. Sure, there's some idealized path to FI, right? Like, you find this when you're 18 and you are FI by the time you're 25. But I mean, that wasn't my life. Jonathan, that obviously isn't your life. That's not realistic for most people. Being perfect right out of the gate is not realistic for most people. Not only that, it's not even necessarily a good thing. Like, challenge is important. Getting better is important. Struggling is important. Trying to get to that point of mastery is important. And so I view that as a wonderful thing. There's always ways to level up. And you just have to figure out what that path looks like for you.
And the word you didn't use there, but I think it's important, is that failure is important. When Christine is using that word, I did my lazy 3 miles, it's because she knows that she can do it. She does it all the time. It's a routine. And so even when we're doing something that's quote unquote hard, a lot of us look for like the easiest way to do. I am so guilty of this. The easiest way to do something. And we kind of give ourselves credit, but we never it's hard to take that next step because we, as humans, we don't want pain and we don't want discomfort. And so it's important just to recognize when that's kind of becoming a problem and saying, well, why not? If every time I've grown, it's been through failure. If every time I've grown, it's been through discomfort, why would I go out of my way to avoid those feelings and sensations? And just that tiny little shift that says it's okay to try something and fail, that's probably a sign that you're on the right path, is massive. So yes, we're talking about fitness, but are we? Are we?
But are we?
With that, let's transition into the Choose a Fight 2020 wins. Hey, Eric, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. So nice. Someone said this earlier in the live stream, but listening to you guys on 1x speed is so strange. I'm always listening to you on my hikes, and my podcast is at 1.5x. So you're a little slower.
I know. I try to talk really fast.
Yeah.
Is that any better?
My problem is I'm a very slow talker. So yeah, for everybody who's used to the one.
Brad is from New York. I'm from Virginia. That doesn't make sense.
You would think it would be.
It doesn't. Yeah, I'm from New York
Brad
too.
is from Long Island. He's from Long Island. He
Me
says
too.
food store.
You're from Long Island as well?
I am born St. Charles Hospital, Port Jefferson, New York.
I was born in St. Charles Hospital as well.
All right, we're going to go into a 5-minute sidebar here. Everybody get ready. I've never seen it not happen.
That's right.
They're about to start appearing street signs.
That's wild. That's
amazing.
Really
all right, cool.
Small world. I think we have another small world story with you coming up here shortly. So to be continued, but we'll have a little foreshadowing there. But yeah, tell us what's been going on in your world this year.
Yeah, so 2020 was a hard year. I realized for a lot of people, for me, a little different. I was introduced to the FI community by my best friend about a year ago. So fall of 2019, I went through and binge listened to all of your content, read The Simple Path to Wealth. Like, I was all in, like total Jonathan here. I want to be, my FI date was set, so it took a little bit of convincing for my wife to kind of get on board. So really 2020 was January 2020, my wife and I started sort of re-scripting our financial life together. I'm a small business owner, so I'm a sole practitioner. I'm an architect, have my own business, and it's kind of a non-traditional practice. So I design homes for people, but I also have kind of a YouTube channel. So I'm a YouTube creator as well. And that started off as a side hustle, but that kind of took center stage this year. So that ended up being, a really big part of my business this year.
What's the name of your YouTube channel? Just get it out there.
a 30 by 40 design workshop. So it's just,
Awesome.
it's on architecture. I work with clients and then I just kind of make videos about that. But, rescripting our financial life sort of started with paying down all of our debt. So the debt that we had was our mortgage basically. And with the business, I started this business in 2013 and I had always had this cash runway. So I had this big cash cushion built up. And I did that because I didn't want to go back to working for someone else. So we kind of realized at the beginning of this year, as we're looking at our finances, like that money wasn't working very hard for us. So we took that big slug of money, paid off our mortgage with it, and then kind of took the rest of it and built an emergency fund. So 6-month emergency fund right there. And we did that in February. So kind of before all this madness hit. But that was nice to have that kind of headspace there. And I know there's lots of conflicting opinions on whether you pay your mortgage off or you invested. And we were glad actually when March came around that we didn't have to think about paying the mortgage.
What did that feel like when you paid it off, Eric? What was that actual day like? I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was just incredible. I mean, the grass it just feels different under your feet, as they say. It really is true. And it's that kind of headspace really allowed us, I think, in the rest of the year to just take more risks. And I know, there's always kind of a risk sort of evaluation that you have to make when you're paying off your mortgage or you're giving up one thing for another. And for us, I think it just allowed us to do other things later in the year. So, I mean, it's a personal decision, certainly, but I think for us, it was, it just was really good. That was the last debt we had. So we sort of moved.
So let's talk about this because I know I would do this. I would be wargaming the heck out of it in terms of like knowing that I could take more risk. I'm not so concerned with what, these one-off purchases that I make are, how much my life costs on a month-to-month basis. What I'm really watching is if I need to reel it in, I'm like, how much does that cost? Like my survival budget, how much is that survival? Because that gives me the ability to tolerate a ton of risk. So I'm curious, after you paid off the mortgage and you reckon, not what are you actually spending on a month-to-month basis? Because I know you have FI as something you're shooting for. You're making value decisions all the time. But when you paid off the mortgage, what was the monthly recurring number that you realized, I need this number each month to be able to maintain or to be able to like survive? And anything above that, I can make choices, but like, I'm good as long as I'm hitting at least this number. Did you ever do any math along those lines, or did you have any sort of like runway back of the envelope number that you kind of sit on, my life, this just got easy?
Yeah. So, I mean, we may be just in a different position than other people. My wife is a research scientist. She has her own research lab. So we just basically said, as long as you keep this job, like we're in good shape. And then we're going to take whatever my business earns. And that's going to be, we're just going to, throw that on the fire. We're just going to put it all in basically. And so I guess that was our bare bones budget. And, I know you, Jonathan and Brad, you guys have kind of differing philosophies on, is there a budget? Is there not a budget? I'm sort of more in Brad's camp where I'm not gonna, it's
all
less.
Right, fair enough.
Sorry.
Fair enough. No, you didn't take the bait. It's fine. It's fine. Eric, man, this has been amazing. Anything else that you want to share with the community? Like what's next for you guys? You paid off the mortgage, you freed up a ton of space. How are you going to leverage this new ability to take risk?
Well, I mean, this was the first year we actually opened a brokerage account. So I always presumed that post-tax brokerage accounts were for wealthy people. So this was the first year we actually did that. I mean, so we just poured it all in there. We set up 529s for both of our boys. They're in 9th grade and 11th grade. So we're super late to the game. I mean, we never really thought that we would have the ability to, save for their education. And I think, given what I know this year has been difficult for a lot of people, but given what my business was able to do this year, we were able to double down on those savings goals. We saved 75% of what we brought in so far this year. So it's been pretty interesting. And, thanks to your content and just discovering the FI community and running some numbers and realizing that we weren't actually that far from our FI number, just that sort of financial literacy that we bought, that allowed us to make just a different set of decisions and realize that, FI was a lot closer than we actually thought it was. We were people who always thought like 65. Yeah. I mean, that's a long ways away. And now we just have a much different vision and outlook and goal. And, it's just been incredible. So I just want to thank you guys for putting all that content out there and making it possible, because a year ago, this wasn't even on my radar. So it's just, it's been life-changing.
That's remarkable. Yeah, it's amazing. Really, when you believe that it's possible and you understand, oh, wow, I don't have to wait. right?
Totally.
Society tells me 65, 67, and maybe, just maybe you can retire, right?
That's
As
right.
opposed to when you have that locus of control in your own court, it changes everything. And yeah, Eric, that's amazing. And actually, so we talked about a small world story here, right? So we actually have, just by sheer happenstance almost, which is still remarkable, almost as remarkable as you and I being born in the same hospital
So
in
strange.
random Port Jeff, New York. So we have one of your best friends from back home, Jason, here on the line, and hopefully Ed is helping facilitate getting Jason into the live stream. But as I understand it, so again, this is sheer happenstance. We got a lot of people sending in their wins, and you told me in an email, "Hey, my friend Jason is going to be on this stream as well," and he's the one who introduced me to Phi.
Yeah, incredible. He's just, and I can't thank him enough for tuning me into that. So he's a Long Island boy too.
Prepping this intro the whole time, I was like, "Hey, Jonathan, I see your 2 Long Islanders, and I raised you by 1 more." And with that, we have Jason.
That's great. Nice.
There he is. Ooh,
Hey guys.
a lot more
Hey,
facial hair
Jason.
than me.
All right, Eric, I'm going to let you listen offline, man.
Well,
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you.
All right, Eric, have a good night. Jason,
Well,
Hey
welcome.
guys. Hey, good to see you. And strangely enough, I was also born in St. Charles Hospital.
Oh, wow. What a crazy small world.
I'll just
Yeah.
get off the line and let you Long Islanders have it, man. You guys
Absolutely.
you guys got this covered.
We haven't talked about hometowns and high schools yet. So anyway,
It's coming. Brad's going to circle back with these guys offline. I guarantee it. They're incapable of not doing it.
got their email addresses. So anyway, Jason, so you introduced Phi to Eric, which is super cool. So how long have you been in the community? Or is he the first person that you kind of introduced to FI? Or, tell us more basically.
Sure. So I figured out pretty early in my career that I didn't want to persist in the workplace working for other people until traditional retirement date, right? And then about 5 years ago, I learned of the community itself. I had been working towards it, doing lots of things on my own, for my family, but didn't realize some of the tools that are now becoming very commonplace in the fire community. So maybe 5 or 6 years ago, started really buckling down and really working towards a strategy where I could start to pin down a date and a budget and all those things. But before that, it was just, I know I've got to get our savings and therefore our burn rate in a position where we could retire early. It was just a lot more ad hoc.
So what actual changes have you made over, obviously we could talk about 2020, but just more broadly speaking, like just regale us basically with your story.
Yeah. So, always we're good savers. And, we before we knew it was a thing, I think my wife and I were always really good about, increases in salary should go towards more saving. Bonuses, I was in a position where I was fortunate to have bonus compensation many years, put that all towards savings. And, early in my career, especially from working at startups, I had a career in biotech. Sometimes I worked at companies that didn't have 401ks because they were so small. And so then started that, after-tax brokerage savings. And, once I started to learn that the right strategies, what they were, it turned out I was actually already sort of on the path and just needed to make some adjustments to do it. And so over time, just got a lot smarter, read a lot more, discovered podcasts like yours, and realized that this was actually achievable. And frankly, it was achievable earlier than I thought it was going to be.
So when do you currently expect that to be now?
So as it turns out, early in 2019, I realized that 2020 was probably going to be the fire year for me because, in fact, the way market conditions were going and some equity that I had was going to pan out sooner than I thought. And so, in fact, I hit my FI number in May of 2019, and I stayed on until June of 2020, at which point, just 6 months ago, I pulled the trigger. And so I'm now 6 months post-fire.
So did you reach Phi and then drop below the line and then go back up, like something like that? Or talk, because that's a very interesting timeline. Like March was an interesting month for those people that just reached Phi.
Yeah, so I wanted to see some things out at work. I really, enjoyed the company I worked at, and so I ended up staying on almost a year after my FI date. And part of that is, again, I had some things I wanted to see through. And then in March of 2020, to your point, when things started to get really crazy, that was around the time I was originally going to bow out. And because I worked in diagnostics, it seemed the wrong time for a lot of reasons to step away. And so I ended up staying on another 3 months and, helped contribute to some work that was really interesting and fulfilling at the company. And then in June said, no, this is it. This fits our strategy. And so in June, we moved out of a very high cost of living area to a much more moderate cost of living area. And now that was 6 months ago now somehow.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, first, a huge congratulations. That's remarkable.
Thank you.
What did that first week or month feel like?
It was pretty wild.
Setting alarm clocks.
That's a great question. And I was processing so many emotions right in the first week. And I honestly wasn't cognizant of it right away. And that's because the first 3 weeks after I stopped working were really about getting ready for my family's upcoming move. And once we finally got in our new place, I just realized how much of a kind of a tornado was around me of things I was feeling and thinking. So many people have written about this who were post-fire. But, I started blogging, not because I love writing and having people see what I'm thinking, but honestly, it just helped me work through all of the things that kind of that big of a change come to you. It's such a mix of, excitement, seeing the opportunity, the fulfillment, being able to be with my family more, especially when we're locked down, which, in California, we were pretty early on. That stuff was all great. But on the same note, it's a lot of, the typical uncertainty, no matter how much you plan, how is this really going to go? I've worked hard to get my budget in order. Is it going to be sufficient? So it really was quite a wild period of time. And there's been lots of, ebbs and flows over the past 6 months since then. But yeah, the first week was pretty great, all things considered.
Have you made your first drawdown check yet? Like, have you actually drawn down since leaving your job? I'd be curious because that is its own phase. Can you speak to that just for a second to people?
Absolutely. So I follow a pretty now somewhat common bucket strategy. So I'm drawing down, kind of the bucket one, which is the cash reserves. And I'm all about having it, about a year and a half or so of cash, and particularly going into the type of environment that we have found ourselves in. So I started, on month one, really thinking about it like a paycheck. And that was by design. I lived on my fire budget for a full year before retiring because, there were going to be a lot of changes. I was going to start paying for healthcare out of pocket and all sorts of things. And so having the confidence that I could do that on my fire date meant the world to my family. And so on a monthly basis, I do draw from that cash bucket, which is just a Fidelity money market. So it's the same as cash, but I move it into my checking account once a month. And then we live off that money every month. And then we do the same thing the following months. So yeah, it is a strange concept to go from such a mindset of accumulation to one where you're starting to be ready to consume some of that. And that's going to be the way we go going forward. But I got pretty used to it quickly.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a lot of people's fear is that first month when after spending an investing lifetime, an adult lifetime, saving money, you have to draw it out for the first time. And yeah, it's interesting to hear that, like you, okay, this is not, it takes a little getting used to, but like you just said, you got used to it real quick. And it's just in the way that you set up that system, right? I think that's the important part is it's going into your checking account. So it feels as if this were a direct deposit, right? Like it feels as if it were a paycheck. So I think that's a pretty cool way of doing it. And certainly if you can even automate that, right? So it doesn't feel like, oh man, in your case, you're not selling anything, right? You're just transferring. But I think that would just lessen that psychological impact a little bit. So yeah, I love that you've set it up that way.
Yeah.
Jason, what is the name of your blog?
Oh, it's called The Next Phase Is Now. So it's thenextphasesnow.com.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Man. All right.
That's
well,
awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be on your show. It's meant so much to our own fire journey.
And congrats, a huge congrats to you and your family.
All right. Now we had a question. I think it was from Rebecca, and Ed's going to add, we're going to bring our next guest on, but while he's doing that, Rebecca had a question about how do I calculate my FI number if both my husband and I will receive a pension looking to retire in a couple years? It's a great question. It's one we've covered on the show, and we actually have Choosify Publishing. We've released a book with Grumpus Maximus that answers it directly called The Golden Albatross, Worth It versus Worth It. Not all pensions are created equal. A real quick answer, and then I'll point you to the episodes. Maybe, Brad, you could just find out what episode we talked about this in depth. But the short answer here is when we're talking about our FI number, we're talking about what number do we need that we could draw down a certain number of a certain amount of income on a regular basis to cover our monthly expenses. When you have a pension, some amount of that income is completely covered. That's the contract that you have with your employer. They're going to provide for you a set amount of income. So what you would look at is your monthly expenses or your annual expenses. How much of that is your pension going to cover? And then the difference between the delta between those two, that is then what your FI number is going to need to encompass. So that's the simple answer. The longer answer is it's a great question, and there's a little bit more nuance to it. Go check out Brad. Maybe you could point directly to that episode.
Episodes we've had Grumpus on are episode 227 and episode 57. So yeah, those are two really good pieces of content. So definitely check that out, Rebecca.
Book is also available as an ebook on choosify.com/store. I got to plug that. I just got.
Oh, nice. choosify.com/store. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Thank you. All right. Who's up next?
So I ran out of Long Islanders.
No, they're still around. They're just hiding.
So up next is going to be Sarah, guys. Sarah, you're on.
Hey, sorry I'm not from Long Island.
I don't hold it against you at all. Promise.
Great. Awesome.
So Sarah, how's your year going?
Actually, surprisingly pretty well, considering, how the rest of the world is going. I finally got invested into VTSAX this year. So that was a big 2020 win for me.
Was that your first time investing in the market?
It was, yeah. So I actually graduated physical therapy school in May of 2019 and kind of hit the ground running hard, trying to figure out how to adult. And in that process, I kind of found the Mad Fientist was actually my first peek into the ChooseFI community, financial independence community. And so I actually sold my car for $3,000, which got me into VTSAX. So that was
no kidding.
Big win for me there.
The minimum investment. I love it.
Yeah. And I actually took it to CarMax first, and they gave me $2,500. And then another place was like, we'll give you $500 more. I was like, great. So I don't
say no to $500 more. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, so you've actually
like that in Richmond that does that actually. That's fine. You're not in Richmond, VA by any chance, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm in Austin, Texas.
I mean, I think you would basically just go find a CarMax anywhere in the country, and you would immediately put up a small, just banana stand right next to it. And you would say, we'll pay $500 more than just bring us the CarMax offer. We'll let them handle all the infrastructure because we know they're going to undercut whatever they say. We'll just tack $500, and we know that we still have $10,000 of margin left in this just because of the way they do this.
It. There's billboards all around CarMax, and it's like, come to our place, come to our place. We'll give you $750 more. We'll give you $500 more. I found out about the $750 more after I already got the $500 more, But
see, now someone else knows. Now they know, where can I get $750 more than Car? And to be honest, I love CarMax, so I'm not even hating on them. I'm just saying. All right. So Sarah, you have now experienced your first market crash as a new investor, which is kind of interesting. I'd love for you to talk through with the audience, because you said you graduated in May of 2019. Mm-hmm. You started investing in VTA. Give us a sense of a timeline and what effect this market crash had on your investing psyche.
It was a little intimidating. I actually didn't get invested until June because I was, I had just started working. I was learning about the financial independence community. I was listening to all the podcasts. I was reading A Simple Path to Wealth. And so it took me a while to finally get into the market. And I actually got invested in June. So I got in when it was still kind of low. And now haven't actually experienced a big dip yet. But it prepared me knowing that I felt like I was getting in at a low period, knowing that it can still go up, and I haven't actually had to experience a loss yet, but I know it's coming.
But to your point, there was a lot of uncertainty then, right? So it wasn't like
it wasn't a normal time, quote unquote.
Yeah,
So
it was definitely in the midst of the pandemic. So getting in at that time was a little nerve-wracking, but I had the background of the simple path to wealth and having the confidence and faith that getting in there and staying long-term, there's going to be these ups and downs. So I'm getting in at a down, which felt like a win to me.
Yeah, on sale, as J.L. Collins would say. So, before you keep going with your list, you said you graduated from PT school in 2019. So, do you have a lot of student loan debt, or what are you?
Unfortunately, yeah. So that was one of the, I guess, kind of a big win is that I have currently $78,000 of student debt still. But with this current 0% student interest, I decided to hold off on paying off my loans because it's not costing me anything. And from, I guess, February until now, I've actually saved $20,000 that I would have been putting towards my loans. And so now I kind of have to make the decision soon coming how I want to, nest egg that, keep it for emergency savings or put it towards loans but it's just kind of a safety net kind of feeling knowing that I have that.
That's tough, right?
A little safety
I have a safety net for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
And I could keep the safety net, or I could pay down my 0% student loan interest debt.
Yeah. So I've been holding off on that, and which they keep postponing. So I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of been nice, a blessing in disguise with everything going on that student loans have been postponed.
Do you have any other consumer debt?
I actually don't. It was drilled in me to never get into debt. So I did have some credit cards, but I've always paid it on time and in full every month. So that's,
how many times have we said that verbatim, right?
It is also drilled in my brain there. So no, surprisingly, when I sold my car, I actually got to drive my mom's old used car. So I have an old used car that I'm driving right now. No car payments, no credit card debt. So the only debt I really have is student loans.
Okay. So PTs make a pretty decent income. I think it's somewhere between 80 to 120, depending on the area, somewhere in that space.
Depending on that, I wish. As a new grad, since I'm still considered a new grad, I guess I make about 64.
Okay.
So working my way up there, but middle class.
Have you looked into it? And I'm not pushing this, but I think, what is it? Isn't it travel PT that just
travel
goes
PT.
I know we got Fifth Wheel PT, Jarek Casaza, that has been massive for his path to financial independence. He talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: with your job that you have now, have you started does your employer offer a match or 401k? Kind of give us a sense for what moves you're making from, taking advantage of employer benefits as they pertain to investing.
So I actually work for a nonprofit hospital-based outpatient PT clinic. So we have a 403B, and they offer a 0.5% match up to 6%. So if I put in 6%, they'll put in 3%.
Nice.
Oh,
so that's
3% of your salary for free. That's
pretty much basically. So not complaining
and you are
about
doing that. Just for clarification, you are doing nice.
Yes, and even when I stopped doing my student loan payments, I actually upped that a little bit, and then actually just starting this month, my company is now offering a Roth 403B.
Wow.
So getting into that. And I actually have an old Roth from an old job before PT school that it's just been sitting there. So I'm going to start looking into rolling that over to my new Roth at my new job.
So if you started to calculate and put together like a savings rate, do you have a general sense for where you are in terms of back of the envelope savings rate?
I would say probably at least 30 or 40% right now. I try to keep my expenses as low as possible. I have minimum monthly payments on everything. So that's where that 20K that I've saved up over the past year has come from.
That is incredible. Good for
from
you.
that. But yeah, so not too bad so far. I just am nervous for when the time comes that I have to start paying back those loans again. But my goal is to get those. My goal is to get those paid off by the time I'm 30. So
listen, the vast majority of medical professionals out there just assume that their student loans are going to outlive them. I don't know where that comes from, but that's just what we take on, and we just say, "Oh, it's good debt. It's just going to be there forever."
And I don't want that.
There's no such thing as what you're giving yourself right now is options, regardless of how you end up using this, because you've made the choice. This isn't just like funding lifestyle. I'm either going to strategically invest this or I'm using it to pay down debt, but I'm using it to buy options for myself, to buy my most precious non-renewable resource, my time. So
My time. That's what it feels like. And I love that.
That's incredible, Sarah. What a way to start a career. And like you said, to have the goal of paying it off by 30. I mean, that just shows how far ahead of the game you are. So just a huge, huge congratulations to you. And thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing with
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Jake. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate your patience hanging out with us today.
Absolutely.
So how's this year going for you?
Oh, this year's been fantastic. Despite everything that's going on, made a lot of moves that have been really good for myself. And it's crazy to think that, with everything going on, you can make all these big moves. And this year's
tell us about the moves, man. Don't hold out on us. What have you done?
We're on bated breath over here, Jake. Come on.
Yeah. So, kind of been just trying to undo all of the American dream kind of thinking that was drilled into me. I graduated college recently and got the high paying job. So I went and got the fancy apartment in the fancy suburb and the fancy car and the nice clothes, things like that. And I realized that wasn't making me happy. So I said, okay, time to take some action after listening to the podcast and reading and things like that. And the big ones are moving into a place that was half as much as the first place I started. I got rid of the fancy car and I went out and bought a '08 Prius for $5,000 in cash, which I actually 1 month later drove 3,000 miles across the country, and it did fantastic.
Oh,
so
wow. Didn't fall apart? Okay.
No, it was great. That's the thing about buying a reliable used vehicle. It works quite well. Slashed the spending big time. Did every little bit that I could. Switching the phone service, cutting the streaming services, all that. And I think the big one, given COVID, is I refinanced my student loans, and they were all private. So I went from like 10% interest rate down to 4.5%.
Whoa. Yeah. How much, what was the volume on your student loans? How much did you owe?
It was like around 30,000.
That's amazing.
And so what I did is in all of this, I kind of lit a fire under me, and Jonathan, kind of inspired by you and you paying off all your student loans, I just decided every last extra dollar I got is going towards the student loans. So I'll be 100% debt free by the end of January.
Oh, wow. Damn, man. That is incredible, Jake. Yeah.
So
cow.
Big moves there. And I mean, then at the end of next year, hoping for 100K net worth. And then in 10 years, hoping that's your buy.
Wow.
All right. So end of next year, you're trying to hit 100K net worth.
Mm-hmm.
How old are you, man?
I'm 25.
Wow. Holy crap. That's dude, incredible. At 28 years old, my net worth was negative 168K. At 28 years old, everybody on this call, at 28 years old, my net worth was negative 168K. Jake is going to hit 100K net worth by the age of 26. Like, you are going to be a multi-millionaire. Like, you're probably going to be worth $10 million by 65. That's probably not hyperbole based on where you're at right now.
I can sure hope so. I have to give you a shout out, Jonathan. The Talent Stacker podcast has been a huge thing for me too, and it's definitely lit another fire under me.
Are you going to look into that? Are you going to look into that program we talked about?
So funny enough, maybe, but actually, so I work in IT, and so I'm a project manager, and that works pretty well. And I'm looking to get the certification for Agile project management. That's a Scrum Master is what they call it. But I am just inspired now. Oh, I should expand my horizons a little bit. Why not have some options? And
yeah, man,
trying to get back into programming, and there's plenty of stuff online for that. And then I could be the traditional fire story of the software engineer. And maybe that'll have to
go back to the stereotype, Jake.
Exactly, be incredibly stereotypical. But
let's add one. I'm joining the club.
But, I love that idea of just having options. And
yeah,
dude,
I love the idea.
You made Jonathan's night that you love Talent Stacker and are taking action on it. That's incredible. Hey, I total kind of pivot here for a second, but you mentioned before about getting out of the expensive apartment. Was it like, did you have a lease? Like, how did you, or was it coming up and then you decided, like, talk us through if there's anything there.
Yeah. So, the lease was coming up, and then it was just, okay, this has gotta end. And the first place was $2,000 a month. And so it was time to make a change about that. And actually I slashed that again another half this year. And due to all this working remotely kind of things, I actually moved back to my parents' place
Nice.
temporarily, and so now the rent is 0, which is just okay.
A little better than 2000. A little
Yeah,
better.
exactly. Getting rid of the student loans.
Yeah.
So
If I knew that my kid was targeting 100K net worth at like 26, like, yeah, you want to move back in? Fine, go for
Absolutely.
it. Like, if that's your goal, go for it. Like,
exactly.
that's amazing. That is just freaking amazing. So
Yeah,
we've cut our go ahead, Brad. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, I mean, that's something I credit my parents letting me live there after graduation. I lived there for 2.5 years, and had something on the order of a 90% savings rate. And I mean, that was the springboard for everything that has come later. So I mean, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my parents for that. And I think there's a lot of like societal, or not in this community clearly, but there's a lot of societal, shame, if you will, around, oh, you moved back in with your parents. But man, when you have goals like you have, like I had, it's that tool. And it really, like I said, it was a remarkable springboard. So it's cool to see you doing that as well.
Yeah, and I can't thank them enough, and it's offered a great opportunity for me, especially being able to work remotely, and I hope to continue this on. And now this is going to be my springboard, hopefully, that I could start traveling full time and working remotely for as long as I possibly can, because I sure love this, and I hope to continue it. The hope is maybe trying van life, if I can make the internet thing work. You never know.
Starlink, anybody come in? Starlink, come on.
I know, I'm hoping. Come on, Elon. Get out here, man.
But man, that's the cool thing, is you can experiment, right? Like that's the wild thing. And like, you might find that van life just doesn't work for you, or you might find it's the greatest thing ever and you want to do it for the next 70 years, right? Like that's the cool part about having options and coming from a position of strength, right? So man, good for you. That is really genuinely incredible.
Jake, thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been absolutely amazing. I will just comment. I'll just say one thing. I don't know about van life personally for me, personal choice, but I will just say not having a commute, best thing ever. Like, not like there are probably quite literally millions of people that just realize that you could have a life, that you could do the actual job that you've been doing the last 20 years. You could do it without a commute. And you don't actually have to be stuck in traffic for 2 hours every day. You don't actually have to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to a job by 8 a.m., to leave by 5 p.m., to get home by 9 p.m., to start all over the next day. That's actually was just an illusion. And we can now move forward.
Yeah.
This world's never going to be the same on the other side of this. That is something that's here to stay. And so the FI community is disproportionately prepared to start wielding this newfound power and demanding that we work remote when desired.
So we didn't, I think Jake got booted a little bit too quickly there, but Jake, thank you, man, for being here. Greatly appreciate it. And it's just so cool to see people making moves that early. That's really incredible.
Hey, Zach, welcome to the show.
What's going on,
fellas?
Zach?
Thanks for having
Excited
me.
that you're here, man. Catch us up. What's going on?
It's been a great year of FI and figuring out the why of FI and taking some actionable steps.
What is your why of FI? Tell us a little bit more about your why of FI, Zach.
That needs to be the question that I think asked behind everything we do. I think it comes down to what we're all chasing, which is, whether we realize it or not, or will eventually, is time and health. And it's not necessarily about having all these fancy things, although it can be. But just the real reason is to be able to wake up every day and figure out what you really want to do.
Have you thought through that? Like, have you gotten any clarity about what it is that you want to do with your time and with your health?
Yeah, I have, and I have these conversations daily to try and get more clarity, and it's constantly worth figuring out and thinking about. And there's some things that I love and that I still hold on to. And I want to travel the world, and I want to fly business class everywhere. And I have a 2006 Hyundai Sonata that I love and take pride in. And so it's kind of these ups and downs and highs and lows that you want to reach for. And I don't know if they're necessarily frivolous or if they are fun. And I know there are people at the country club down the street that are miserable, and there are people on the street corner that are happy. Right. And finding a happiness in wherever I am at FI is the goal.
No, I love that. And it's about what you value, right? So I think you said, the ups and downs or the highs and lows there, but like I don't see that as odd or inconsistent at all. Like, and I'm not sure necessarily if you were implying that, but like the 2006 car and the business class, like that's logically consistent to me in a very FI way, right? Because it's based on you. It's based on what you value, right? Like for me, it was always my 2003 car. Like I don't value cars at all. I literally need the thing to get me from point A to point B. But I've come to value things with my health. I've talked about CrossFit that I go to. That is not cheap. It just isn't, right? Like I obviously could do body weight exercises here at home, but I just love going to the gym. And like that to me is money well spent. So I think that's really a critical point that, we try to touch on the podcast so often, but like we can't say it enough. It's all about what you personally value. And it's cool that you're going through this exercise.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when I realized what I really want is it's sort of guided me into a real passive income goal. Most of my investments and my strategy is towards that.
Nice. Yeah. So tell us about any kind of changes you've made this year or wins, like, give us the quick highlight reel. Obviously you've talked about the psychological side, which is critical. I mean, I would argue that's 95% of the game. So even if we just stop there, huge wins, right? But anything money-wise that jumps out to you?
I started 2 small businesses, which was wild at the start of COVID. One of them, which was just a passion project, something I discovered on vacation in a really nice hotel, was a smart toilet, a bidet, heated toilet seat, sprayer with warm water, rear sprayer, front sprayer, dryer. And this thing was the best. And you don't have to wipe it.
You picked a good time in the toilet paper shortage, right?
And we ran into a TV crisis of all things.
Well, but isn't that it? It's like going through this world looking for opportunities, right? Having the right mindset and saying, like, what's the thesis? What does the world need right now? And apparently what they need is bidets with a little extra thought placed on comfort.
I think you can almost stay that holistic with it. The more you listen to you guys and read books, it almost opens your mind to opportunities that were probably right in front of you that you didn't see before. So yeah, it's been powerful to recognize things and feel confident being able to take action.
Do you have a background? You said 2 small businesses. Do you have a background as a small business owner or entrepreneur? Like, is this your world, or is this kind of something, a new skill set that you've leveraged recently?
New. I took some skills from my career. My company makes retractable shade products, and I started a retail side of the business, basically selling the products that we manufacture. But this is all new, for sure. Figuring out how to, I studied entrepreneurship, but you're not going to learn much until you are in the trenches and filling out the paperwork. And
I think we need to continue this conversation another day, man. This is like, Brad, take a note here. I don't think we're done with this conversation. So,
Zach, we'd love to have you back on to talk about lessons learned, because, really starting a business anytime is difficult, right? To put it mildly, but then to do it in the midst of this year, obviously. So, I mean,
actually, Brad, I remember Alan just recently, Alan and Simon in a UK paper had an article published saying, now, heart of COVID, as challenging it is, never been a better time to start a business. Never been a better. And then it's like, whoa, no. But at the same point, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that, Zach? Like, does that ring true for you at all? Like, if the idea is right and the process is right, what are your thoughts about this as a time to start a business if you're going into it with the right mindset?
I mean, I think out of any strife and change comes opportunity. And people are changing the way they're living and operating. And now's as good a time as any. People, it's still the economy. There's still tons of money flowing around, tons. And you just have to grab your piece of it. And now's as good a time as any.
Well, yeah, like you said before, when you expand that zone of awareness, right? Like you see connections that you might not have seen, right? I think, Jonathan, I pulled this out one time, hopefully that I'm getting it right. It's that reticular activating system that, like, it's, similar to when you buy a new car, right? Like you buy whatever, Hyundai Sonata or something. And then all of a sudden you see everywhere you go, you see Hyundai Sonatas, right? Or you hear your name and I actually hear this thing. Like your awareness is open when you can make these connections, right? And to your point, like, you're listening to our podcast, I'm sure other podcasts, reading books, and it's seeding your brain with all of these ideas, and you're looking for them, and like, how can I make a connection that's going to make my life better? And like, I think to me, that's why I love learning as much as I can. I love just reading wildly diverse stuff, because you never know what those connections you're going to make, where that's going to lead you. And I think that's like just such a cool way to approach life.
I agree. I love it.
All right, Zach, thanks so much for joining us on the show today, man.
Appreciate you, fellas. Thank you.
Little sidebar for the sidebar here. I may have just purchased a bidet as of like a week ago. I've had the recommendation like 12 times. I'm quite confident that I have. I have not unboxed it yet. I have not installed it yet. Consider it more like an insurance policy, because I will not be one of these people squealing about a lack of toilet paper at Costco ever again. I will never go to Costco in fear, wondering if they're going to have to. I refuse to do it. So I may never install this thing, but Ed basically told me, if you have one of these, then it reduces your needs for paper products by like a factor of 10 to 20. And I was like, okay, we'll put one of those in the attic just in case we ever have to deal with one of these again. So I don't know. I'm just saying, it seems like, talk about reticular activation. I had literally heard the word bidet one time prior to 2019, and it seems to come up on the weekly. So worth pointing out.
Yeah, it's a fixture in most hotels in Japan and in Korea. It's like it's everywhere. It's heated, like
the heated seats are fantastic.
And the massages.
We could go down a rabbit hole here. Let's.
Anybody ever watch Demolition Man? I'm just saying, someone needs to explain to me the 3 seashells. Then we're all caught up. That's the future right there.
All right, Ed, who do we have next? Costa, it looks like.
Yep, up next we got Koska. Koska, you are on, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Why don't you catch us up, man? What's going on with your year?
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of echo everyone else, I mean, this year has been really hard for a lot of people, but I gotta say, the one thing that hasn't been taken hard is, our path to 5. We have been actually accelerating that more and more every day, and I think COVID was something that even springboarded us even more. We were kind of on the path before, but this really hammered home why we need to do that. So kind of the beginning of the year, we actually bought a house that I'm currently sitting in now. So I know a lot of thank you. Yeah. I know a lot of the guests were
Looks
saying
nice from what we can see. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's coming together slowly but surely. Not racing to furnish it, not having too many people to sit in it. So a few rooms are still empty, but we do have a cool story, and kind of echoing the other guests this on the podcast, that we started out. I mean, my fiance started out 3 years ago, graduated college with 80K combined student loan debt. And we thought we made it because, she went to tech and I went to finance, so 2 lucrative careers. And of course, immediately at the gate, she got a fancy apartment. I was still living at home because I knew I was going to propose. So I wanted to save up some money for a ring. And my parents were actually really happy that I wanted to stay home, so they had me. But started learning about FI 2018, and then I was like, oh, I'm hooked. I love it. And I knew that I turned my ring savings after I bought the ring into wedding savings, and then I was trying to tell my fiance, hey, I know that you're in this apartment and you really like your independence and you really like being close to work, but if we want to buy a house, why don't you move back in with your parents for a year and a half, save all that extra money, and then we could put a down payment on the house. And, we started kind of going back and forth. Now, we'll just do an apartment for a couple of years, and we'll just do the traditional path where it's like, okay, rent, and then buy the biggest house that you get pre-approved for. So a few things happened quickly. We got a bit of a windfall, paid off about 40,000 of that student loan debt.
And what was the initial number that you guys started out with? I'm just trying to remember. 80. Wow.
Yeah, and that 40 that we paid off was at 7% interest. So that's why we kind of prioritized that like immediately. Yeah. But then it became real that we could buy a house. And, my fiance and me were like, hey, you know what, let's start working as a team here. And you just saw the gas pedal get thrown down to the floor because she moved back in. We saved the money, and then we started house hunting, and everyone's like, oh, get the bigger house, get the bigger house. And we're like, we have a budget, we have a number, we have an area, you're not changing it. This is what we're doing. And we ended up buying it 20% down. And we even shocked our realtor. She was like, you guys are the youngest buyers in this neighborhood. And
Wow.
we were only 24, and then she was 25. So yeah.
That's cool. So
Congratulations.
let's start working together as a team. I love
Yeah.
that. Man, that just jumps off the page to me. And so was there like a conversation that led you guys to really getting on that same page? Or do you remember like what were the steps to seeing eye to eye and having this plan going forward?
Yeah, so the real thing that brought me to FI was we've both had some major health issues. So my fear was our health is going to take us out of work, and then what are we going to do from there? I had heart surgery at 20, and my fiance was just struggling with her health issues right out of college at the beginning of her career. So my thinking was, let's try to really get moving quickly at the beginning, so that we can make the later years easier if we ever needed to, if our health deteriorates. So far, so good. Yeah, healthiest that we've ever been. We'll actually get into that in a second. Because Jonathan, I really wish I would have heard the episode on YouTube where you did the challenge for the weight. Because this year I've lost 84 pounds just this year.
Seriously?
Yes, I was 265 pounds,
Are you
and
serious?
I'm down to 161 on Saturday. So I'm like, I could have banked so much money just by.
Oh, of course you
betting
could have.
myself.
Holy crap.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Congratulations.
thank you. That's actually a byproduct of FI. And the reason why I'm kind of linking everything together right now is because when I brought this up to my fiance and said, hey, it's our health, this isn't just, I want to get rich quick. I want us to take a health. She turned around and said, well, you need to worry about your physical health today. So that's where we start teaming up on the health side and then the wealth side, as we like to call it. So, yeah.
Health and wealth.
I
Taking some notes
literally have
here.
goosebumps. That is amazing. That is truly, truly remarkable.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I mean,
All right, so when was the start date on that? Like you said, 260 pounds. Now you're 161. When did your journey, your health journey begin?
Yeah, technically it probably started last year, in the middle of last year. And I tried doing diets and stuff like that, but I would keep going back out to eat. And, I was living with my parents, and I actually had an hour and a half commute. So I've listened to all the podcasts and probably a few episodes a couple times actually. But it's like, it's late, I just want to go grab something from like a fast food chain restaurant. And so I lost maybe 15 of those pounds last year, maybe towards the Q4 of last year, and the remainder just came off this year alone. My fiance said, hey, we're cooking every meal at home, we're watching cheat meals, the initial cheat meals will be made at home. So the majority of my budget, before moving it together, was probably $600-700 alone by myself, with living with my parents who were cooking and buying food at the house. And now moving together, our combined monthly food budget's about $450-500, and that's including detergents and soaps and stuff like that.
Wow. I have so many questions for you. I will resist most of them. I feel like it's a whole nother episode, but most people struggle to lose 10% body weight and then keep that off for a period of 6 months. That's a common goal. You have lost and maintained the loss of 80 pounds, and done that from a holistic, I'm not going to be on a crash diet. It needs to be more of a lifestyle. I'm doing this as a philosophy where I'm building my health and my wealth. Balance is oozing. This is amazing. So I have so many questions, and I will reserve them for another day. But congratulations, Costa. That's incredible.
That is amazing. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for being here. And yeah, just onward and upward, health and wealth.
I appreciate it.
2021, health and wealth. Congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you both.
Brad, I'm not comparing at this point, but I would have been very happy with my 30 pounds that I have.
No, there's no
lost
comparing.
and
There's
kept
no
up.
comparing.
No, I know, I'm not. I'm just like, oh my goodness. I know, what was involved for me, and it was moving away from the idea of a diet and making it a lifestyle, and then just leaning through it, not being so worried about the end result or hitting a number by a certain day, but just saying, this is a choice I've decided to make for the rest of my life, and this is what I'm going to do each and every day. And then once you got to the point where you realize you were okay with that, then the results are inevitable, and it's not tied to like 45 days in or 60 days in or 90 days in. It's just, no, this is what we're doing. If we need to tweak the plan a little bit, we can, based on what we learn about ourselves. But anyways, it's very impressive to see someone be able to build a lifestyle that like forces the result they're looking for. All right, guys. So let me just ask you, what are you failing at this year? This is important. Failure is a really, really good thing. We want to fail small, fail quickly, fail forward. And we're going to crush 2021. We're absolutely going to crush it. All right, guys. The fire is spreading, my friends. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.